Hello, beautiful family. Peace and blessings. Peace and abundant blessings to each and every one of you. Welcome to a new episode of Bad Thought Therapy. I'm Sherry Hardy, and I pray that you are well. It has been another great day in the neighborhood. You guys, I just finished another school year. Still have a few more days of post planning, but I praise the Most High God that I was able to get through another great school year. I feel very fortunate for that, and I have a great principal and great students. I got to watch my babies graduate, and that is always one of the highlights of my career. So, this episode is going to be about teachers, and I'm going to share some things with parents, particularly black parents, that you should never do. For whatever the reason, I don't know if it's a full moon or what's going on, but there have been in the last 2 weeks, there have been quite a few situations where teachers have what I call gone wild. And these teachers have gone wild on mainly black children. And so I want to talk about some things that you should never do, make some suggestions about things you should do if you are a parent and your children go to school in public schools, private schools, really anywhere. Have been a teacher for over 30 years, and I am a parent. My daughter's 36 years old, and I can tell you that I had a few situations that I had to work out. Not a lot, but I'm going to share what I know. Most people don't know or understand things unless they have experienced them themselves. So if you've never been in a school, you never worked as a teacher or administrator, you wouldn't really know what goes on in a school. And if you knew, you might be surprised depending on the school. You might be surprised in a good way, and you may be surprised in a bad way. So here's some things that I want you to know. And I'm going to take a story straight from the headlines and use those as springboards to talk about some lessons that can empower you and your children. So don't forget to like this video if it helped you, and subscribe to my budding YouTube channel. It's absolutely free. It only takes a few seconds, and I would greatly appreciate that. Let's get into the lessons. The first story I want to talk about is out of Kentucky. You probably have seen the headlines. There was a parent, a mother, who put a recording device in her son's hair. Her son is a nonverbal autistic child, and I believe this was an elementary school. And she had some concerns because school administrators were telling her that her son was, I guess, doing inappropriate things or breaking rules. She was surprised by those reports because she knows her son at home is a very mild mannered child, is not a behavior problem, is a very good child. So she kept saying, okay, I wonder why I keep getting these reports. Well, y'all, she put a camera in the child's hair. The camera was able to pick up some audio recordings of what was happening to him at school, and it is very, very disturbing. And so I'm sure that there is a lawsuit that is going to follow. I don't know if any of the teachers or administrators have been relieved of duty, but she had a very compassionate, this parent had a very passionate plea, and put the public on notice about what happened to her son. And here's one of the things that black parents should never do. And I know this is sort of controversial, but I would not send my child, my black child, to a majority non-black school. I just would not do it because of racism, unfortunately. Now, I am 60, almost 61 years old, and I was one of the first set of black children to integrate the elementary school that I went to in Florida. At the time, this is the late 60s, early 70s, mid 70s. I went to this school, and I don't remember like any really overt racial incidences. But I do, and I didn't feel it necessarily. There was maybe one or two teachers. In fact, when I was in the sixth grade, my teacher, who was a non-black teacher, a Caucasian teacher, that was my favorite teacher of all time. And I have a picture of her sitting behind me on a bookcase behind me. And I've been fortunate enough to have that picture now for over a decade. And how I got that picture is a long story, but nevertheless, Because of that teacher, I feel that I am a more sensitive teacher. I feel that I am a better teacher because of her. She really is the inspiration for me going into education, and I'm very grateful for that. So every situation where your child is not the majority is not necessarily bad. But unfortunately, right now, like in the last 2 or 3 weeks, there have been incident after incident after incident. Your child, and let's keep it real, could be hurt by going to a school within his own community where he is a part of the majority, so he could get hurt there. But here are the stats, though. If you really look up the stats, the incidences of abuse in our schools, in the community, are far less than those other schools. So I strongly would not recommend doing that, especially the younger the child is. One of the reasons why I moved here from Florida, my daughter was 8 years old, was because of a racial incident. That was one of the reasons. She loved catching the bus, and then all of a sudden she didn't want to catch the bus anymore. To make a long story short, there was a young lady on the bus who was calling her the N-word and using all kinds of racial slurs, and this child was physically assaulting my child. Now, prior to this, I would teach my child, if someone hits you, tell the teacher, tell an adult, don't try to fight. Because as a parent of a black child, I don't want my child to get the reputation of being a fighter or being violent, because I know how that would impact her record. And I know how you're already judged to be violent and have all these negative stereotypes about you. And I didn't want that my daughter to, in some kind of way, live up to those stereotypes or be a part of those stereotypes. But there's a big but there. There's a but. When I went out there and I asked the bus driver, my daughter would tell me about what was happening. I asked the bus driver to do one simple thing. I just told her, just separate my daughter from the girl. Don't put them together. This is what's going on. I don't remember at the time wanting to confront the parent, or did I? And if my memory is correct, I used to wait at the bus stop with my daughter. So I don't know why I never interacted with this racist child's parents, because that's where the little girl got it from. You're talking about a child that was like, my daughter was 8 at the time. She probably was 8 too, or very close to that. So this child was taught the evil of hate. And so, but I don't know, but I did say this. Once the bus driver did not follow my instructions and keep them separated and put them back together, and then the incidences continued, and I gave my daughter permission to defend herself, I wrote a letter to the principal of the school. I wrote a letter to the bus driver, to the transportation director, and this is way before. I don't even believe I had a computer, y'all. I think this, because this was like 1998, and I didn't even have a computer. 97, 98, right? So, but I remember writing these letters, and I remember the day that I went in to take the letter to the principal, she was unavailable, so I just dropped it off. Before I got to work that day, the secretary told me I had a message. And when I called the principal, she assured me that everything was going to be okay, because I said, I have given my daughter permission to defend herself, and she will not be suspended from school, and this is what has happened. Now, apparently, the principal did talk to my daughter. She remembers that, and apparently she had talked to this little girl too, as well, and probably her parents. But by that time, I had moved my daughter. I had decided that she wasn't going to catch the bus anymore. Either I would take her to school, or I would have, at the time, they had these different preschools that would take elementary school students to school and pick them up. And then all you had to do was pick up your child from the preschool. Well, that worked out for me. And I have to give a huge shout out to La Petite Academy, which is not in majority, you'll never see them in a majority black community. However, I'm so grateful for them, because that was a different situation. Sometimes you have these foils where, you take two situations, they're very similar, but they're different. So in La Petite Academy, she was not in the majority. However, she was treated very fairly. The staff was very loving. They were very supportive. And I'm one of those people, I keep an eye on things. And so I always kept, I monitor things. And that's what I want to recommend that you do. As a parent, you must be assertive, not aggressive. You must be assertive. You must keep an eye on things. And here's the thing that you have to understand, and this may be unfortunate. You have to remember history. There is a group of people, and this group of people has a long history of terrorism and violence and just pure evil. And you cannot forget that history. So you cannot blindly trust people with that history. Now, what you have to do is you have to, when you see trustworthy people, you can trust those people. In other words, you just sort of can't have this blind trust because it's a school. Because who works in a school? People. And some people, their hearts are pure, and some people, they're just filled with evil and darkness. I don't know how, this is a nonverbal autistic child, how you could be so cruel, because what you're going to hear in that video that the parent has that she plays is cruelty. And it's a child. And may God not have mercy on their soul. And so, and you know this is a child, and you should not be in a school, and you don't, and I know teaching is hard. I've been in business for a long time, and by no means am I perfect. I'd like to think that 99% of the time I've been professional and I've had a pretty good career. However, I've made mistakes as a teacher too. I've gotten in my emotions, and it hasn't been perfect. However, I never ever tried to or let myself forget that I'm a mother and how I want my daughter to be treated. That is how I wanted to treat other people's children. That's how I try to teach other people's children today. Sometimes there are challenges in education where you're dealing with, difficult children. However, it still does not give a teacher a right to be cruel or mean or evil towards a child, because at the end of the day, they're still children. Y'all, the video is disturbing. You don't see anything, the audio, you just hear the audio, and clearly something happened to this child. And I hope and pray that the school district will do what it should do, and that is to fire all the people involved. Because another thing is, when you send your children to these schools, let's say you have one bad apple, right? But then if you don't have anybody to stand up for your child, and they all conspire together, it only makes it worse, because now you don't just have one person behaving badly, you have people that are willing to hide that and cover up for that teacher. And that's why I said that all of them need to be fired. But yeah, you have to keep an eye on things. When we were still in Florida, we were not in a majority district. It was Seminole County. Now Seminole County has changed. That was almost 30 years ago. But I remember her classroom teachers had, said a few things that were inappropriate. I chose to teach my daughter at home. And I remember one time, I think this was first or second grade, her teacher was pregnant. And then unfortunately her teacher had a miscarriage. And the teacher told the children, now mind you, these are little elementary school children, she told them that they were the cause of her miscarriage. Now that was egregious. I could have gone to the school and said something to the principal, but I thought about that because the lady was already distraught that she had lost her child. I do remember her being pregnant. And I chose to tell my daughter and just deal with my daughter. And I told my daughter, you're not responsible for her miscarriage. You have nothing to do with that. And I just remember explaining things to my daughter. And I told her that it was wrong. And I just dealt with my daughter. So that's another thing as a black parent. What you should always do is talk to your child. You should always make sure that you and your child have a relationship where your children can tell you anything, and you can sit down and help them learn how to navigate through these situations. And here's why. You want your child to know how to live in the world if you are not there. You don't want your child to walk in the world as a victim of anybody. So you have to teach your child how to speak up, how to defend himself or herself, what to be aware of. Again, I know that bad things happen in all kinds of schools, but when you take a black child and you put them in when they're an extreme minority, I can just tell you story after story after story, something bad can happen and they can lose their lives, and it can be considered oops, an accident, so to speak. I remember a couple of years ago there was a story of these parents, and this is heartbreaking. This is absolutely heartbreaking. The parents had hired a private swim teacher, a swim coach for their son. Well, the child ended up drowning. You wonder, how does a child drown? And I think he was like the only student. I think this was like a private swim teacher. So she just had one student at a time. And my mind went into a very dark place. I didn't want it to. But did that person allow this black child to die intentionally? Was it malicious? And see, this is the thing though. I believe that those parents sent their child to that particular teacher because they thought they would be better. And I remember crying thinking, God, I could have taught the child how to swim. And it just grieved my heart. But a lot of times, this is where black parents mess up. They think that they're sending their child to a better situation because it's not black. When, yes, there are issues in both kinds of schools. I teach in the inner city, and the inner city schools have their own challenges. At the same time, if I had to choose between two, I'd choose the inner city school every day, all day. Your child has a better chance of getting the nurturing and the support, especially if you are a parent who is assertive, not aggressive, and you are supportive and you want the best for your child. I'm telling you what I know, not what I think, not what I heard, that your child is better off in that situation. We have a unique set of problems because in the inner city you do have a lot of poverty. So you have people that have socioeconomic challenges. That does affect behavior. That does affect sometimes the school culture and climate. But I can tell you this right now. We have so many students who graduate from high school, college, and going to do great things because if that student is willing to apply himself or herself, regardless of all these other challenges, they are going to make it because they're going to get the support they need to make it. So be very mindful if you're one of those parents and you think, oh, if I send my child over here, it's going to be better because they're not going to have to deal with baby kids. I don't know. I wouldn't do it. I would send my child with baby kids because baby kids will teach them how to get through life. Baby kids are going to make them stronger. And you have a different kind of support. Yes, abuse does happen at our schools, but the incidences are very infrequent and they don't happen at the same rate. And it's not going to be racial. So please, 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 parents, don't think sending your child to the other people is better. Don't forget your history. For the life of me, I don't understand that. Again, it is kind of tricky because you don't want to walk around being negative because of history, but you don't also want to just blindly trust people without vetting their trustworthiness and without and understanding that racism is alive and well, and you have to be mindful. This was a young child who could not talk. Now, if you're going to send a child who's a little older or the child is verbal, maybe it might be a little bit better, but I would not have done this. And my heart grieves for that little boy, and I'm grateful that the parents are the kind of parents that they are. They are loving and they're nurturing, and so that child should be able to be okay. But and he's very young. Maybe he won't remember the cruelty because it was definitely cruel. And I pray that those people are dealt with in the way that they need to be dealt with. All right, let's keep going. Here is another very, very disturbing story. I'm going to read the headline. It says, Teacher swings 5-year-old by feet, drop child on head, called her ugly as hell for playing during rest time. Y'all, now I've been a teacher for a long time, and I have to say this. I have seen the best and worst behavior of students, teachers, parents, administrators. I've just seen it all. And I am planning to write my memoir about my experiences as a teacher. This is the absolute worst. This is a person who should not have been in the school. But here's another case where you have a white teacher, you have a black child. And again, I want to emphasize that black people do abuse children as well. In schools, it just doesn't happen the way it's happening when your child is an extreme minority. This child should not, 5 years old, should not have had to deal with this kind of cruelty and this evil. Uh-oh, it is raining. I might need to shut this thing down. Can y'all hear that thunder? It is thundering and there's lightning, so I may have to end the podcast. But y'all, whatever you do, be diligent and keep your eye on your child and let the school people know. This is something you should always do. Let the people at the school know that you are an involved parent. and that you are assertive, and you are not going to let anybody abuse your child, and that you are willing to help, and you need to be volunteering at the school. You should never just drop your child off and let it go. And again, these are young children, so they can't defend themselves. Do not put your children in this situation. You should never put your child in this situation. I'm telling you, not what I think. I'm telling you what I know. Go back. You can find this article if you can stand it. It is very disturbing. This happened again. I know that she will be relieved of duty, this teacher, and hopefully she will serve some time. This is absolutely cruel. But do not do it again. And prayerfully, when your child comes home, you will be able to talk to your child and nurture your child. Create a loving environment for your child. Create a relationship with your child where you and your child can talk and have conversations. This is critical for you to know what's going on, because if something happens, it may be that they'll tell your child, like, don't tell anybody, or they'll try to cover it up. But you want to have an open relationship where you and your child are always talking, and you can know what's going on, and your child will open up to you. All right. This next story is out of my home state. I'm going to read the headline. Florida teacher fired after hanging a black doll with a cord wrapped around its neck in class. Y'all, I don't understand it. I don't understand it. This lady is over 60. She is my age. She's probably a veteran teacher. And I don't know why she would take a black doll and hang it. I know something probably happened in class. However, if this is the only way that you could deal with, y'all, again, it's thundering. I hope you can hear it in the background. If that's the only way you can deal with discipline, that's when you know you got to give up teaching. Teaching is not easy, and we're dealing with a different generation, different kind of child. This technology is changing humanity before our eyes, and you may not see it because you're not a teacher, but I have. But regardless of what children do, this is not the way. This is not the way to respond. This is what happens, and this is a spiritual lesson. Something I teach my students, that whatever you put in you is the only thing that is going to come out. If you listen to hatred, if you watch it, if you're around it, it's going to come out one way or the other. And that the reason why she hung that black doll, because that what was in her. Because she could have just taken the doll and put it away. She could have told the child, take it to the office. It's so many things she could have done. No, what she did was she hung this child, and that we know what that means. We know about the history of lynchings in this country. Again, there are people, there's a group of people, and they have a long history of violence and terrorism and evil, just all manner of evil. And it didn't go away. Even though laws changed, and even though people started to have more rights to be able to do certain things, you cannot change a person's heart. People's hearts didn't change. So these people grow up, this stuff is in their heart. They have to work with kids of different groups, and the hatred is going to come out, and that's what happened. And so you got to be mindful of that. You got to teach your children who they are, and you got to teach them to be mindful of their history. Be mindful of their history. And again, the problem is that there are some people who are delusional, and they don't get it. They think it's safe for their children to be in these situations, and it's not. Maybe your child will be all right, maybe your child won't, but you need to make sure that you are dealing with people on an individual basis, but make sure that your children are aware that this is what can happen, and it does happen every day, all day. And so the lady has been relieved. She's been fired, and she probably won't be able to get a job somewhere else. Again, it was in her. That's a spiritual lesson. One of the things that I pray for now is for people who can hurt children, especially, to be exposed. And it's coming, and other people are praying too, that these people can no longer hide. And that's what, in the past, a lot of people would throw a rock and they will hide their hand, and that is changing now for it to come out into the open, because if they have all this hatred in them, it can hurt somebody. and it has to stop. But again, the number one thing you should never do is send your child in these spaces and just think that it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay, because there's going to be somebody on that staff and they are not right. When my very first year teaching, I was the only black teacher on the staff. There was a black assistant principal, there was a black counselor, but I was the only black teacher. And I was young, I was naive, I was so innocent when I look back on that in so many ways. And I experienced some people that had an issue with me being there. This was rural Florida. I graduated from college right here from Clark. And when it was Clark College, now it's Clark Atlanta University, came back home. My original plans were derailed, and I didn't end up doing what I was supposed to do and going to grad school immediately and becoming the lawyer that I wanted to become and all that good stuff. Nevertheless, I ended up in teaching at this school in rural Florida. And boy, oh boy, so many memories. But there was racism, and it was real. And now this school, though, was very interesting. It had very poor black children, but very poor Hispanic and white children too. But then you had a population of very rich children. So another life lesson for you is to always teach your children that they are not less than because they have less money. That they are, a lot of times, they don't know that they're just as smart as anybody else. And it may not always be expressed on paper and, on tests or whatever. That's because they have not been exposed. And so even when you don't have a lot of money, you want to work overtime to try to expose your children to things, expose them to the world. They can't take the trip to France or to Africa. Let them take it virtually. Expose your children and educate your children at home and enrich their education home so they can feel empowered. Because when they go into certain spaces and they are the extreme minority, other people may make them feel like they are less than. In this particular part of Florida, it was where they grew ferns, the plants, ferns. And a lot of those people worked in those fern factories. They worked very like manual jobs. And there was extreme poverty. Let me tell you, oh my goodness, I remember one time I took a student home, extreme poverty. Like, I grew up in the projects in Florida, and I'm like, ooh, this is rough. And so, but you have to teach your child, no matter what their socioeconomic status is at that moment, that they are just as smart and it can improve, especially when they're in spaces and when they're in the minority, because they will try to make them feel like they are less than. Stereotypes people who follow stereotypes do have, stereotypes can affect us, meaning that there's always a stereotype that we're less than. So when people sort of play into that, it makes it seem like it's true, but stereotypes are not complete, and everybody is not, like these so-called negative stereotypes, and we're not intelligent. It's just that we have not been exposed for so many reasons. And so you got to be careful about that. Teach your child the truth. But this teacher hung that doll. You can go look it up. The doll, black little baby doll, is hanging. I said, Lord, why? When that is a very evil part of our experiences in our history. Again, teach your children history. Don't ever let them forget the history, but also teach them that there are good people in every different community. I'm very fortunate that I have seen the best and worst, because sometimes you get fixated and you only see the bad, and then you forget, but there's good too. There's a lot of good, and I'm very fortunate that I've seen both. But yeah, that's what that teacher did. Be mindful that this is what's in some people's hearts and how it will translate to their experiences in the classroom. This is the last situation I want to talk about in the episode. It happened right here in Georgia, and this happened at Newnan High School. It says Georgia teacher fired after video shows him calling a black student a racial slur. Apparently this teacher, at Newnan High School, and this is a majority non-black high school, something happened where there was a discipline issue with the student. And again, what's in your heart is going to come out through your mouth. He called the student a bad word. He called him an N-word, and he was fired from that. It was captured on tape. I do believe that a lot of parents, that I looked at some pictures of the school, they believe that sending their children in that environment is better. And I'm telling you, it's not what you think, because when your child grows up in a school where they can learn their history, they can learn, they'll get to see images of black people that you don't see in the mainstream. Where, we live in Atlanta, and Atlanta has like doctors and dentists and lawyers and judges and people who own multi-million-dollar corporations, and you just see it every day, all day. You don't see the stereotypes that the media has used to derail us and to distract us and make us. And I always say, what is copying what? Is art imitating life, or is life imitating art? So as a black child growing up, and all you see are these negative images, or those are the images that are amplified, do you really believe you can be anything more than just a thug or a rapper? And of course you can. Now some people, I'm telling you, good news is this, because I teach them, y'all, it has changed. When I first moved here, I was concerned, but let me tell you, these students now see the light, and they understand that the music that has been fabricated and filled with all kinds of filth and degradation, when they see that, they realize what that is. They realize it's a trap, it's a trick. Because you couldn't sustain a good life with what you hear, and a lot of times the so-called ghetto behavior that you see in some of the movies and shows. And then many of these kids, they see, black excellence all day, every day. But when you put your child in these settings, this is what's going to happen. It was something about the child had on a beanie and he wasn't taking off. I don't know. See, in my school, and I teach all girls, but then we have a brother school, it wouldn't even been that much of an issue. That's another thing. When you send your child to these schools, every little thing they do is micromanaged. And I'm telling you, you should never do it. You really shouldn't. You should either find a private school, you should do homeschooling, you should do what are these schools, charter schools, something where it is safer. Yes, things can happen in the community, and they do, but not at the frequency as they do in these other spaces. So the little boy, this is what's ironic with all this racism and stuff. Guess what? These black boys still growing up, and they're marrying the very people that were part of our ancestors' nightmares. They're going. So even though I'm talking about this, at the same time, this little boy probably would grow up and he probably would get with somebody that doesn't look like his mama. And that is just the reality of it, is because people do remain delusional no matter what. So that's my take on it, y'all. We have to pray. We have to pray. We have to pray. We have to pray. And we have to pray that God will protect our children, that God will keep them from evil, protect them from evil, and keep them from harm and danger. And within the community, outside the community, that's what makes it so hard sometimes. I talk about this a lot. As a black person, you're dealing with racism a lot of times, but you're also dealing with the violence and evil in our community. We don't have a sense of community. We don't have a sense of love for one another. And really, we all are part of God's family. And we should be judged by, as King talked about in his famous speech, I Have a Dream speech, we should be judged by the content of our heart and not just the hue of our skin. And so we got to remember that, and we have to pray about that, because we can do better as humans. I still marvel that humans have made so many advances in technology. We got our cell phones and laptops and drones and all this technology. But as humans, our humanity has not progressed in a way that it should, and it can be better. The golden rule, and this is the rule that I try to live by every day, and that is, I try to treat people the way I want to be treated. I try to treat other children, people's children, the way I would want my child to be treated. If every person, regardless of their race, their ethnicity, their religion, if they would follow that simple rule, our world would be so much better. It would be a more beautiful world if we just treated people the way we wanted to be treated. We got the rants going on, all these different people with their different rants and the hatred, and it's really jealousy. And I talked about that in my last episode with the Gonzalez rant. what I talked about in that last episode is that a lot of what you see is jealousy, because you have seen people just rise above so many problems and adversity, and there's a lot of really jealousy going on there, and we got to make peace about it. People just have to really learn how to make peace about it and create the things that they want to see in their own communities. And if we all did that and we just respected people, just treat people the way you want to be treated, we wouldn't have some of the things that we have. So, y'all, it's like teachers gone wild. I don't know what is happening. I know it's at the end of the year. Most teachers are tired, and I do understand the challenges because I am a teacher and I've been a teacher for a while. I've seen the profession change. I've seen people change, and it is concerning. I'm being honest with you, it is concerning. But I see more beauty and I see a lot more good than I do bad. And I do think that all schools should have some type of um, training for people. If you're going to teach people of other groups, I really do think that training, sensitivity training, maybe you could call it, is that what they call it, is necessary. It really is, because some people do struggle, and it's deep. It's in their blood, because that's what's been passed on generation after generation. And so that's what I advise Black parents to do. Just don't put your children in that situation, and don't be delusional thinking that they're better off because they're in that situation, because they're not necessarily. And I remember a friend of mine, this came out of the blue. She just one day she texted me a message and she wanted me to read something, and it was about a racial incident that happened when she was a child. And she had never talked about it, and she was still traumatized by it. And I know we're all the same age, so she's like 60 years old too. And we just don't understand how traumatic these incidences are and how they stay with us. Now, I say that we need to learn how to heal and move forward. Again, when I go out into the world, because I travel and I'm in the world, I'm in spaces where I'm not the majority sometimes. And because of my career and what I taught, I usually was the only Black teacher in those spaces. So I understood, I had to be mindful of things, but I tried to go in every space that I went into. I tried to go and be very positive, make sure that I had a very positive attitude. I didn't want to go in focus on the negative, but I do understand that I can only trust you if you show me you're trustworthy. At the same time, we must try to highlight the good and remember this world is the way it is because we as humans have chosen it to be this way. And with the help of the Almighty God, we can change. We have to ask God to search our hearts, search our minds, reveal to us what's in our hearts and minds that shouldn't be there. The dirt, the filth, the resentment, the anger, the jealousy. God is a real healer. He is a real doctor. He's a spiritual doctor. There is no other like him, and nothing can replace him. You're just not going to get healed without him. You may get a bandage put on something, but you're not going to have complete healing without a relationship with the Most High God. One of the analogies that I use to try to illustrate this point is, I'm on my laptop right now, and I try to teach this to my students, like, my laptop is plugged up. So it's hooked up to the source of power. But if I unplug my laptop, it'll only work for so long before it will cut completely off. And then I will have no access to power because the backup battery has been used up. We're like that. We need to hook up with the source of power, who is also love. He is the creator of love. And the reason why a lot of people can't love and treat these children, these stories are just disturbing, but they can't treat these children with love and respect because they're not connected to the author of love and to the father of love. They're just not connected. And they may be religious. Oh, they may burst a church open every Sunday. But guess what? There is no God in them. And that's what I see too. But if we will ask God to search us and to cleanse us and to show us what we need to do, He is faithful to do it. And we can love people as individuals and not just look at them and the outer epidermis and the color of their skin and form judgments about them. We have to keep reminding ourselves of how the media intentionally and maliciously works. It highlights everything bad in our community. It highlights the very worst of behavior. Now, if you're watching you're using the media like most of us do, and you're seeing these images over and over and over and over again, then you begin to believe that those stereotypes are true. I was just talking to a coworker the other day, and I was telling this young man, I said, I don't know anybody like the stereotypes that I see on TV. Because the people that I'm around and that I deal with, they are nothing like those people. They are doctors, they are lawyers, they are dentists, they are teachers, they are accountants, they are ministers. Like, I don't even know these people. And yes, I know that they exist because I did have a business. I put my business in the heart of the hood because I wanted to make an impact there. And I saw the so-called Shanaes of the world. And before that, I didn't know, where is Martin Lawrence getting these people, this caricature from? Well, I know now because I have seen that. But our community is filled with a lot of different people. And so the media chooses to highlight the negative, and you have to make sure that you are not, and the negative not just for us, but also for other people. So we need to be mindful too that we're holding certain ideas in our head because of the media and these negative stereotypes, and we need to be mindful of that, and we need to pray. Let's just never give up, and let's never forget that this world can be better if we as humans are better. Well, I hope this episode blessed you. This concludes this episode. If you have any questions, don't forget you can email me at badthoughttherapy@gmail.com. I wish you well, peace, and abundant blessings. Y'all, I got 3 more post-planning days, and then my summer will begin. Take care. Bye-bye. It will only take a few seconds to like this video and to subscribe to my educational YouTube channel. I thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day.